Hello, everyone. Welcome again to the Rotten Horror Picture Show, the horror movie podcast, where we talk about films off the Rotten Tomatoes 200 Best Horror Movies of All Time list. My name is Clay, and with me, as always, is Amanda. Amanda, how are you doing?
I am very good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited because we have exited the 70s, where we've been
finally,
where we've been for the past month or so.
Yeah, probably a little longer than that, actually.
Yeah.
At least on and off.
And we have rocketed all the way up to present day,
Yes.
more or less. Well, the recent past. We're now in the future. The past has occurred. And we will be doing, we've also rocketed way up the list, too. This is the first time we've been this high on the list in a while. We are covering today number 9,
Wow.
2020's The Invisible Man. I'm actually curious how many people actually saw this because of when it came out, but it came to streaming, I think, pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And it was on HBO for a while. So hopefully people have seen it because, spoilers, I think it's great. It is number 9, as I said. It has a 91% Rotten Tomatoes score.
Wow.
It is one click higher than A Quiet Place, which, sure. But yeah, let's. Had you seen it before we watched it?
I had not. This kind of, I missed it. I think it came out and I wanted to see it, but I was jet setting and traveling internationally. And then when I got home, it was a pandemic.
Yes,
yeah.
yes. This was actually the last movie I saw in the theater before everything shut down.
Shit.
It's not a bad one to go out on, I think.
Yeah,
but,
actually, this one seems like it might be. So I not to get too into it before we do our intro material, but I liked it. I feel like it maybe was more effective in the theater.
Yeah, it was.
I'm excited to talk more about like your view of it, contrasting the two experiences.
Yeah, I thought it was a very good theater movie, and we can definitely talk about that. But yeah, we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to talk about The Invisible Man.
Adrian. He was a sociopath. He said that I could never leave him. He controlled how I looked and what I wore. Then it was controlling when I left the house. And eventually, what I thought. I'm sorry, I can't take you with me. I'm not gonna leave you with that thing on. Are you okay?
Get back here!
What happened to him?
Adrian's dead. Listen, you're getting your freedom back, okay?
He said that wherever I went, he would find me. Walk right up to me, and I wouldn't be able to see him. Adrian is dead. He's not dead. He has figured out a way to be invisible.
Are you okay?
He's sitting in that chair. Where are you? Show yourself!
Surprise. Let me help you.
You can't help me. Surprise.
All right, The Invisible Man from 2020, directed by Leigh Whannell, written by Leigh Whannell, starring Elizabeth Moss, Oliver Jackson Cohen, Harriet Dyer, Aldous Hodge, Storm Reed, Michael Dorman, Zeus the dog, and unfortunately, not John Cena. Amanda, what happens in The Invisible Man?
After staging his own suicide, a crazed scientist uses his power to become invisible to stalk and terrorize his ex-girlfriend. When the police refuse to believe her story, she decides to take matters into her own hands and fight back.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pretty solid synopsis.
I think so. Yeah. Pretty much covers everything.
Yeah. Well, some things you will find in this movie include, Claire.
Mm-hmm.
Height-based displays of newly acquired wealth.
What a way to just rub it into people's faces immediately is by handing them a ladder and say, this is where I am now, high above you.
Get on my level.
Yeah. And then go to fashion school.
Yeah. Parsons for everyone. A restaurant that does things a little bit different.
I almost put that actor's, I wanted to find the actor who plays that
the
waiter and
He's
put him
great.
in starring, because that was a very underrated performance.
Oh my God.
Of someone I don't even think we see his face. I can't remember if we see his face. But
I mean, we might briefly, but it's not the point.
You don't
need to. You don't need to see his face.
You see a fully ridiculously tattooed arm, like forearm, and that is all you need. Perfect casting, perfect performance, great character.
Yes. And the email everyone wants to write their sibling, but no one ever actually sends.
Yeah. I mean, everyone's got that one draft.
Oh, yeah.
Somewhere deep in your email thing that just says do not send in the subject or something.
Right. Whether it's in your email or, in a carefully hidden notebook you keep in your bedroom so your brother can't find it. Yep.
Yeah. I don't think I've never written a letter like that to my sister.
I've definitely in private written letters like that to my older brother, not for a very long time, but back when we were both teenagers and we were both horrible human beings.
I think I may have done it to someone else and never sent it. There might be one of those somewhere, but not a sibling.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the fun bit of trivia about this movie is obviously this is sort of a cast off of Universal's failed attempt to start a cinematic universe, or the dark universe as they were calling it, which was supposed to initially start with the movie Dracula Untold, but that bombed.
Yes.
And so they had to, this time we're really going to start it with Tom Cruise's The Mummy.
Oh gosh.
Which also bombed. Yeah. I would like to say Tom Cruise is usually when I'm sick, I like to watch movies that I wouldn't normally watch.
Yeah.
Because it's like, why not? Even at that point, I fast forwarded through about 75% of that movie because it was so boring.
Yeah.
It's just not great.
Yeah.
And then they scrapped that whole idea. Originally, The Invisible Man was going to be written and directed by somebody else, starring Johnny Depp as the Invisible Man.
Oh, that's right.
And so this has no connection to that stuff, but I guess it was already in the pipeline, so they kind of reworked it.
Something, yeah.
And not to get on a soapbox here.
He just stood on a soapbox, everyone.
Let me just get out of my...
Up on the podium, yep.
Okay. I've been saying for years, as soon as I saw that they were doing this dark universe thing, I said, no, you don't throw money at these things and turn them into gigantic spectacle things.
Yeah.
Everybody's doing that.
Yep.
Go the other way. Do smaller movies that are legitimately scary. Make the Universal monsters mean something again and not just make them CGI tentpole garbage fests. And you're going to get a better product. And that's exactly what they did in this movie. And I think it worked very, very well.
Yeah. Yeah, and this movie's kind of a prime candidate for that style of filmmaking and that lower budget, because you can do so much with just the absence of anything.
Right.
Like an empty room in this movie is scarier and has more impact than a lot of money you could have thrown into special effects.
Yeah, and I guess the special effects that they did do was a combination of state-of-the-art stuff and, hanging shit on wires and whatnot. And they do, Leigh Whannell, I believe, is one of the co-creators of Saw, I think. Mm-hmm. And so he has a long history in the genre. He and the other guy there, whose name escapes me from Saw, they both have long histories. The other guy is the guy who did the Insidious and the Conjuring and stuff.
Yes.
And despite what Saw has become, clearly these guys have a good sense of environment-based horror.
Oh, yeah.
Because the best stuff in Insidious or The Conjuring
God,
is...
I love The Conjuring.
Yeah, The Conjuring is great. And it's a lot of environmental, like, house room stuff, like dark corners. It's actually... One of the things that I really like about The Conjuring is that I feel like they digitally make the corners of rooms extra dark. So you can't actually see what's going on.
And occasionally there is something in those corners, but it's so dark that it's almost like it would almost be wasted, except that you do get that kind of vague feeling of something there.
Yeah. And in this one, they do the opposite, where there's so much open space and it is so bright and like all the lights are on. It has the same effect, but it's just the negative reverse effect where you are still scanning every corner of the room because it's the Invisible Man. There's a guy who you can't see doing stuff. Eventually, he's going to do something, and I think it works. I think this movie overall is a very clever, very well done update of a classic story. They found a way to give it a modern spin. Yeah. Make it a relevant story. Yeah. By changing the main character to Elizabeth Moss there. And I just think it's really good.
Yeah, I think this works really well because it feels modern, like you were saying. It feels timely, but it doesn't feel like it's shoving it down your throat. That it's like, this movie is like a very feminist movie, but it's not like screaming at you the whole time like, this is a feminist horror movie, this is a feminist opus, you know what I mean? It's more just like, yeah, we all know that like creepy invisible guy stalking you is scary, right? Like that just it's very relatable even if you've never been in that situation. And the brilliant thing it does is it makes your mind do half of the work of the movie, right? Yeah, like just by not putting something in every shot or not having something happen, it makes your brain try to fill in like, oh, did I just see something? Did I see something over there? And then there are those moments where things do move seemingly on their own or something does happen. And like at first, the first couple, I was like, did that just happen? Like you see it, but you doubt yourself. Yeah. Which is cool because it puts you in the shoes of Elizabeth Moss's character. Yeah, and I think the really smart thing they did was they took a concept that traditionally is a pretty straight sci-fi concept of a guy takes a potion that turns him invisible and he starts wreaking havoc and eventually going crazy. And they turned the Invisible Man excuse me, into this metaphor for escaping this abusive relationship. Yeah. So it's not just that there is literally a guy who's invisible. There's also the PTSD of someone who is legitimately afraid of her for her life of her partner that she's escaped from. And even before the actual Invisible Man shows up, you still get that tension because she's afraid that someone might be there, even if she's being reassured that there isn't. Absolutely. Yeah. That opening scene, for instance, I love that kind of thing because they just drop you right into it, where she's escaping from her boyfriend. They don't need to explain anything. You get it immediately what's going on. Yeah, you're not like there's a few seconds immediately at the beginning where you're sort of like, wait, what's happening here? But as soon as you realize that she has dosed him with something and she's grabbing a go bag and she's sneaking out of the house, you're like, oh, okay, I get this. Yeah, and I think they do a good job of making it clear that she's escaping and not because she's stealing anything. Yeah. Because she's very frightened about setting things off. She's not taking anything with her. Exactly. And then, if that wasn't enough, she even creeps through his like lab with all of his high tech doodads, and she doesn't touch a thing. She's just like, I gotta get out of here. And if that wasn't enough, they really cement it after she gets in the car
and he comes running out of the woods and punches through the window, which is very, very good.
Yeah. No, I mean, I will say this movie as someone who has an ex who way back in the day after we broke up tried to force his way into my apartment.
Really?
And found me at a tea stop in Boston and confronted me on the street.
Oh my God.
And pretty much like lightly stalked me for 9 months to a year.
Mm-hmm.
This is very realistic in a weird way. Like, it's obviously very sci-fi horror-y, but like the feelings that Elizabeth Moss's character, Cecilia, like her level of paranoia and her sort of jumping at every shadow and like her being convinced that he's somewhere even before we as an audience get any evidence of that. Yeah. I mean, it reads as pretty real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even after she finds out that he's dead, I mean, she doesn't believe it.
Yeah.
And this is all well before any legitimate Invisible Man stuff is happening.
Exactly. And I really loved that part because I feel like it was really realistic, like emotionally, because she doesn't have this reaction of like, whew, all right, oh, thank God, that creep's dead, I'm safe. Hooray, this is over, and I'm inheriting a bunch of money. Like, she's not happy about it.
She thinks it's a trick.
Well, even beyond that, she's like, even when she's first told, she goes and she sits in the bathroom on the floor by herself, and like, she has mixed feelings about it, because it's like, I liked that because it gave some level of realism to the fact that she had been in a relationship with this person for years. Like they had been in love. There was actual emotion there, which kind of can prove why it's so hard to leave abusive relationships sometimes.
And to their credit, the movie never shows you him being explicitly evil to her. Like there's, even in that final scene, there is a little bit of ambiguity as to whether or not he's telling her the truth. So it doesn't go so far as to make him this mustache twirling villain.
Yeah.
That clearly he's this awful, awful guy. It's very realistic.
Right. Like, yeah, other people are kind of like, even the sister who comes and picks her up, she's like, what is going on? Why did you want me to come meet you in the middle of the night? What's happening? It's like, nobody really suspects that he's this abusive partner. And I think that also works because that's true. Like, people are in abusive relationships all the time and everybody's like, oh my gosh, I had no idea.
Right.
But I think it also does this great thing where it never turns her abuse into spectacle.
Right.
Like, even when they fight physically, he's invisible. So we're never shown her getting beaten by her boyfriend for entertainment.
Right.
Which I think is actually a really good way to handle this, because I could see this being a tough movie for like anybody who's had like a shitty abusive family member or partner or whatever in their lives. Like, I could see this being kind of hard to watch, but like, because it doesn't kind of just turn that abuse into fodder for like the audience to kind of like be like, ooh, look, this guy is slapping her around. It's like it keeps it away from that exploitative edge.
That's interesting. I hadn't really considered that. Do you find that doing that makes it easier to watch, or if not easier to watch, easier to I don't know if sympathize with is the right word, but like I know what you're saying. Where it's like, as soon as you're actually showing a abusive partner actively abusing their partner, I think that can make it really real for a lot of people in a way that, not that this isn't real, because she's clearly still being abused, but obviously there's a little bit of suspension of disbelief here.
Sure.
But I don't think. It almost feels like it makes it a little bit more universal.
Yeah.
Because you're not seeing somebody specifically doing it.
Exactly.
But it still has the same meaning as far as like the story goes and what has happened to this person.
Yeah, and it's clear without showing those like very violent or very explicit like even when her sister asks her at some point, like, well, what did he do to you? Like, what happened? And she talks about it in terms of control rather than the actual things he did to assert that control. And I think that works because you as an audience member, it's obvious he's abusive and he's a shitty boyfriend. Like, at the very opening sequence when she creeps out and he comes after her and he smashes the car window and tries to drag her out the window while they're driving away. You're like, all right, I know right away that this guy is not a good guy.
Right.
And then based on her behavior, like it sort of lets her experience stand on its own so that she and her feelings aren't being fully just defined purely by what he does to her. It's just letting her exist in sort of the aftermath of it and the like process of trying to come out of that relationship and to cope with it and to find some sort of footing beyond it. But it's still, you pretty much what I'm saying is you don't need to see him punch her in the face to get the point.
It is a really intelligent way, I think, to handle this stuff, because I don't even in the points when she's powerless and talking about her how powerless she is and or was, they're never giving any power to the guy.
Right.
It's all through her. It's all her experience.
Yeah.
It's like you're saying, it's she's not being specific, but it's clear that stuff has happened. So she has been given the power of the situation to express what happened. And again, even when she's actually getting assaulted and attacked,
right.
You're not seeing a big, strong guy doing it. It's just this other inhuman kind of force thing.
Yeah, and you're more, like, even just visually, you're more focused on her and her efforts to, like, evade and escape him than you are on him. Like, his whole presence is an absence in this movie, and it's like the what he might do is much scarier than what he does do at any given moment.
Yeah, it's a thoughtful handling of this stuff that I don't think I fully considered the first time I watched it, but now that we're talking about it, it's like, it's really impressive.
Yeah, it really is, because it never feels like shock jockey or exploitative.
Yeah.
Like it feels, it's still scary, and there are still some great just like scary movie moments in it. So there's still that level of entertainment you can get out of it, but it never crosses that line into like, oh, you're just going to watch this movie if you want to watch Elizabeth Moss get the shit beaten out of her for 2 hours. Like, it's not, the movie's not about that. Like, it's much more psychological.
Yeah, and like, even as far as you don't even really know who is attacking her until, I mean, you kind of know, but like, I think there's a different version of this movie where he talks more. Yeah, or like whispers to her in the dark kind of thing. And there's a little bit more emphasis given on who is actually doing this. Yeah. Which obviously in this there is, but it's later and it's more of a plot thing than anything else.
Right. No, but my husband said while we were watching this, he was like, "So is this just gaslighting the movie?" And I was like, "Yeah, kind of. Actually, like yes. the first half of it is very much in that realm where it's the like he's convincing her that what she's feeling and what she's experiencing is not true, and that she's losing her grip on reality, and that she can't trust her own thoughts and she can't trust her own instincts, and that she's making it up in her own head. Like, that's the scary part of the beginning of this movie, is that like that feeling of not being sure of whether or not you can believe yourself and you can believe your own perceptions of what's happening to you.
Right. And one of the scariest things that I didn't appreciate the first time is that she gets the letter to inform her that he's dead at her safe house. Yeah. Which means he knew she was there the whole time. Yeah. Because the sister didn't tell anybody where she was, and I don't think James there told anybody. Yeah. So it's like, it's even this little bit of a power play where it's like, he knew she was there the whole time.
Yeah.
Maybe he was there invisibly messing with her at that point too. I don't know. We don't get into that, but
Yeah.
One of the things I do really appreciate about this is I do think there is another version of this movie where it is all gaslighting.
Yeah, and there is no... Yeah.
There's, I think, like an indie low-budget version of this where it's more... It's the same kind of story, but it is more... not a literal invisible man, but a metaphorical invisible man and gaslighting. It makes me so happy that this movie is like, nope, we're going to deliver on the title and give you an invisible man.
Yep. No, I appreciate that too. And I'm usually all for the like semi-pretentious low budget indies that do that kind of shit.
Mm-hmm.
But in this case, I'm very for it that this doesn't become just like turns out she was a paranoid schizophrenic all along. Like that would just be like, well, that's just sad. Like,
right.
You know what I mean? There's no catharsis to that. There's no like, hey, this is a fun horror movie to watch where there's like, you know, moments where you doubt your protagonist, but then it all comes together in the end and you get this cool like enemy to fight.
Yeah.
Like,
which I think they walk the line. I mean, they are pretty literal in what's being done to her, but I think they walk the line pretty well as far as could this all maybe be a manifestation? Like I said, there's a lot of stuff happening to her that we see happen to her that implies that it is very much not a manifestation of her own head. But
yeah,
I think if you wanted to, you could probably spin it that way.
Sure. I think for me, it was pretty obvious pretty quickly.
Yeah, I don't think I ever really.
Yeah, I think the thing that really did it for me is like pretty early. Like this is a long movie. This is a 2-hour plus movie. Mm-hmm. And there's a moment in that first 30 minutes to an hour where she's cooking in the kitchen,
mm-hmm.
and the teenage girl is in the other room, and then Cecilia leaves the room, and you see the flame on the stove turn up,
mm-hmm.
and you see the kitchen knife disappear.
Yeah, I missed the kitchen knife this time. I believe in the theater I remember seeing that, but I missed it.
I had a moment where I was like, all right, that kitchen knife just moved and is gone now, right? Mm-hmm. Like I had to like confirm with Greg that like I saw what I thought. I did see what I just thought I saw,
mm-hmm.
which is it's a great trick that this movie plays on you
to
put you in that position of doubting yourself and being paranoid. But because that happened in an empty room, that made me be like, oh, okay, this is gonna be
mm-hmm.
an actual guy in a suit.
Yeah.
Like I feel like if they had done it from her point of view, where it was, or like an over the shoulder kind of shot where like she put the kitchen knife down, she turned to the stove, she mixed up the mushrooms or whatever she's cooking on the stove, she turns back and the knife is gone, I'd be more like, okay, we're seeing this from her point of view.
Mm-hmm.
So is it that she just put it somewhere else, or she moved it, or somebody did something when she was, you know what I mean? It would make me cast more doubt on her perception, but having it be in this like neutral space with no character there, I was like, no, that actually happened.
Yeah,
you know
I think one of the things that I occurred to me more as I was watching it this time is like, this movie kind of has a lot of Paranormal Activity built into it. Because
that's interesting.
Because that scene in particular in the kitchen
mm-hmm.
very much feels like a scene from Paranormal Activity, where it's a static camera, wide shot, like very wide. You see the whole room. People are doing stuff, and then they leave, but the camera hangs out, and then something in the middle or background just goes
mm-hmm.
kind of weird.
Yeah,
that's like Paranormal Activity's bread and butter.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's a lot of that stuff in this movie that they do to really great effect.
Absolutely.
Whether it's that scene or, as you pointed out when we were watching it, there's a lot of humanoid looking things in the background that are just like...
Even the plot point that the daughter, Sydney, wants to go to fashion school. So there's all of these dress forms and mannequins and stuff all around the house.
That's a great little jump scare when they cut to the mannequin.
Yes.
Because for a second, it takes you a second to clock what it is. And it's like, oh my God, there's a person there.
And the movie has primed you to be looking for like vaguely human shapes in the background the whole time. So yeah, it's they do use it to really good effect.
And they do something similar to what I really liked about the Innkeepers, and what I thought they had a really good understanding of in the Innkeepers, which is they understand that the deeper the space, the scarier it is.
Yeah.
And it's not about being outside of the space looking in that is scarier than being inside the space looking out.
Yeah, that's true.
So you've got these deep rooms, like that house that they're in. It's a big ass house. Like if you really look at the way that house is laid out, big living room, huge kitchen, long hallway with doors off of it and stuff.
Upstairs, lots of bedrooms.
Yeah, and so there's lots of corners, lots of space that something could be happening in.
Yeah.
And they condition you, as you were saying, based on some of the ways they move the camera. Sometimes I noticed they'll just do like a pan over, nothing happens.
Yeah,
but the fact that they move the camera puts you on edge.
Right, to make you look at this corner or look at this open doorway or something like that. And then it's like, well, can't see anything there, but that doesn't mean that nothing's there.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you start they give you these deep spaces and they give you these open doors, and you start just drilling into them, looking all around, looking at everything, instead of the way a lot of movies do it, where they position the camera inside the unknown space and like they look out at the people who are looking in, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I never really find that scary because you are now in the position of the thing that is unknown. So that space is more or less been disarmed by the fact that you as a viewer are now in it.
Right. The thing that your eye is being drawn to is back to the character we already know about and the character that doesn't scare us.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can't be afraid that something might be behind the door if you are in the room.
Right, if you are behind the door.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Like Black Christmas, the guy looking through the thing in the door, that's terrifying.
Yeah.
That's inside the room. You're looking, so.
Yes.
It's I'm always surprised how few movies do that. Because it's always inside looking out. It's very rarely outside looking in.
Yeah, I mean, and this movie, there's definitely a couple shots in this where they do put you in the point of view of a potential invisible man kind of following her through spaces, which I actually think for this movie works really well because there's the question of, are we currently seeing the world from the invisible man's point of view, or is this just a clever way to make us feel like she's being followed at all times? Yeah,
they have they good use of like a voyeuristic kind of camera.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good way of putting it.
Looking through a couple things at her, and sometimes could be invisible man
or like
point of view.
The camera's a little unsteady, so it does feel a little bit like your actual view of like just looking around. Yeah.
How do you feel about the? I think this movie is structured and constructed very well. I think the first half, basically the beginning up through when she gets arrested for her sister's murder.
Yeah.
I think they set those pieces up very, very well to make the turn work when she's confronted by and she sees how she's been set up and stuff.
Yeah.
How do you feel about how much they give you and how quickly they give you the invisible man? So it's going from like the flame coming up off the stove through when she throws the paint on him, which is A plus jump scare. Through my favorite, I think my favorite in the whole movie might be the bedroom scene when she's in bed with sleeping next to Sydney.
Yes.
And he pulls the covers off.
And he's taking pictures and you see the camera flash.
And then she's trying to pull the bed sheets.
And you see the feet on the blanket.
Slowly walking forward. That stuff is great.
Yep. And then is gone by the time James comes into the room.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
I mean, I think they paced the Invisible Man stuff pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
I think they do a good job of kind of like we were saying in the beginning, leaving the hints and sowing these little feelings of doubt and misapprehension and paranoia that makes you think, like, is it just her? Is it actually somebody? And then it transitions pretty quickly where you're like, okay, no, it's somebody. Like it's or she if we're seeing it through her point of view, she's seeing somebody.
Yeah.
And then pretty quickly, like, no, it's definitely somebody. You know, like in the scene where he slaps Sydney, the teenage girl.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Like, you see it from Cecilia's point of view, and she is too far away to have done that. Like, she's in the wrong position. It just could not have possibly been her. No one else is in the room. So you know as the audience for sure that she did not do that.
Right.
And then I feel like that's kind of the point at which it starts to escalate, because then pretty soon after that, she's left alone in the house. We get the attic scene where she tosses the paint. We actually see that there is a figure there. I think it paces him out pretty well. I think I take issue with like two things. First of all, why was his cell phone in the attic?
Very good question.
Was it just to lure her up there?
That element...
Was it that he was hiding up there?
I honestly don't know. That element of the plot I do find to be a bit wonky. I think it's...
Yeah, like it's another one. It's another example of those things I think we both talk about, or at least I know I talk about a lot, where it's like, I feel like the writers or the director just loved the idea of having her up in the attic. Like, oh, she's going to be up in the attic.
Right.
And while she's there, she's going to think she hears him. She's going to find the paint. And she's going to toss the paint. And we're going to see him outlined for the first time and know for sure that she's not crazy.
Even in that attic scene, where it's different than the rest of the house because it's very dark. But they still managed to do the same sort of deep space thing in a way that I wasn't expecting. Because she's got that flashlight. And, you know, it's all dark behind her. And generally... you expect her to turn around and see something like very close.
Yeah.
But she turns around with the flashlight and you see how much deeper the attic is. And it's really kind of, I don't know why it's so unsettling, but it's like they show you a deep room, not like
and it's not cluttered.
Right.
Like it's not like the attic in Black Christmas where there's like creepy rocking chairs and anchors just waiting to be swung into your face.
Yeah.
It's low. She can't fully stand up in it. It's very dark, but there's not a lot up there. So it's just like again, it plays with that concept of absence. Like the absence of anything is much more frightening than if they had put a jump scare, like, you know, a face right next to your face thing.
Right.
It's much more unsettling to be like, I know. Because like, you know that feeling when you can feel somebody looking at you.
Right.
Or you can feel that somebody else is in the room, but you cannot see them or you're not sure.
That's why you got to always wear sunglasses so no one can ever tell.
No one can ever tell where you're looking. But like that feeling, we all get it. And sometimes we get it and we're right. And sometimes we get it and we're wrong. It's like that feeling of being home alone and creeping yourself out. And like, that's what that whole attic scene is in that moment. It's just like, that the psychological aspect of, is she just creeping herself out? But I still stumble over the reasoning of why he would leave his cell phone up there. Yeah,
I think that's probably the weakest part of this movie is there's some of that stuff where it's like held up to too much scrutiny doesn't totally work. It's like it's the kind of stuff that you kind of have to go, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Like the attic thing, right?
Yeah.
This time I was watching it, and maybe I think there's a level of immersion that you get at the theater that maybe you don't get at home.
Yeah.
Because I don't remember thinking this as I was watching in the theater, but as I was watching it at home, I was thinking, she needs to use a pretty tall ladder to get up into that attic.
Good thing she bought one.
Yeah. Is this guy in his invisible suit, like...
Yes.
jumping to push that door up and then like
right
ninja warrioring himself into the attic just to
Yeah.
like how's he getting
climbing
up there?
the salmon ladder to get up there.
Yeah, that ladder wasn't always there. Maybe he's not hanging it. Maybe he used the ladder too. I don't know. It's possible.
Yeah.
But there's a few of those things like, does that suit have pockets? How come nobody
Yeah.
saw a floating knife walk into that restaurant?
Right.
You know, does he like tuck it
Can
under
he,
his
like-
arm or
I
something?
mean, I guess it works if it does have like a pouch because it seems like it's those little cameras on
Yeah.
the exterior of the suit that do the thing. But yeah, even the fact that like all of these little camera lenses are waterproof.
Sure. Yeah.
It's like, I mean, I guess if he has the expertise to make this suit in the first place, then sure, why wouldn't he be able to make it waterproof?
Yeah.
But I think that my thing is with these kinds of things in this movie is that this movie, it's a horror movie that has absolutely zero supernatural elements. There's no demonic elements. There is no fantasy really to this except like, I guess you could just say like the near future advance of technology.
You mean optics?
Optics.
When that's one of my favorite things is that A+.
He works in optics.
A+, because what do you not need to know? How that suit works. All you need to know is
Optics.
that it exists.
Yes.
Adrian Griffin is a
Optics genius.
Optics genius. That's
Yep.
all you need.
Yep. The Steve Jobs of optics.
If they had tried to explain it, it would have been terrible.
Absolutely.
And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you.
No. But I totally agree. But like, I think that's actually pretty realistic. Like, we don't really think about how our, like I have a car that I can set it so that if I start drifting into the next lane, it beeps and it course corrects me back into the lane.
I think about that a lot, actually, and I'm going to go into an old man corner for a second.
Sure.
I really don't like those because I think that having all those sensors is going to breed a generation of drivers who rely on them too much.
I don't know if you've been driving at all recently, but people don't rely on them and they need them.
Fair. But I guess my thought
I get
process
it, I
is
get it.
if you have a
Yeah.
camera that looks out the back of your car, you're going to stop turning your head to look. And eventually that camera's not going to work and you're going to kill somebody.
Sure.
Or
no, I
like
get
if
it.
your seat buzzes to know if you're drifting or something and that's what you end up relying on and that breaks, you're going to drift and kill somebody. But anyway.
But I guess all I was, let me more generally just say there are plenty of things in our lives that we just accept.
Yes.
It's technology. We don't know how it works. We don't need it to be explained. If people start explaining it to us, it almost just like sounds silly in real life.
Magnets.
How do they work?
No idea.
So I like that this movie doesn't go into that. I think part of my problem though is that everything in this movie is very reality based.
Sure.
Like there is like, it's all very solid. It's very real life. It's very as close to the actual world as it can get.
Mm-hmm.
So when there are these moments of like, wait, what? How? They stand out really strongly to me because so much of it rings true.
Yeah.
Like emotionally and just functionally, like the fact that she has to run away and like tries to hide where she's living, but he still finds out.
Right.
And it's like, that's realistic. That happens all the time. And it's scary, but it happens. And you can understand how or why, or like, how he might have done that, how he might have figured out where she was living. Like, so I guess when we hit these things where it's like, why is his cell phone just sitting in the attic? How did he get that kitchen knife into this restaurant?
Right.
How did he super casually just like show up in the extremely secure mental health facility that she's been locked up in? Like, I get once he gets in there that he can just walk around because he's invisible. But it's like all the doors in this kind of place are typically locked with like a keypad or a key card.
Yeah. Was he just going to hang out in there all night with her while she was sleeping?
Right. Yeah, there's some moments like that. Well, like how did he get in her room? Like, is he just like a ninja and he's really good at sneaking through doors?
Yeah, I guess, there's really solid rubber soles on that suit. Make sure you don't make any noise.
He didn't accidentally bump into anybody.
Right. Yeah. I think it's one of those things where I don't know if you've heard this I think it's generally like a screenwriting guideline or something where it's like the best stories like this are like normal life, and you get one fantastical element.
Yeah.
Two fantastical elements, everything falls apart. But
Yeah.
like in this one, normal life, guy has a suit that lets him turn invisible.
Yes.
If guy had a suit that let him turn invisible and there was also werewolves, doesn't work. You know,
Yeah.
it's that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I think
if Zeus the dog started talking halfway through the movie,
Right.
it would be like, nope.
yeah, then you're watching Antichrist.
Yours is the sword of Michael.
Chaos reigns. But I think this is a really good example of that kind of story where it's like there's this one element that's fantastical.
Yeah.
And your suspension of disbelief is enough that whatever they do, you're kind of along for the ride. Like you're saying,
Yeah.
is this thing waterproof? I don't know, but it looks awesome when it's in the rain.
Yes.
Technically, I guess it wouldn't matter because he's already glitching out. Maybe it's not waterproof because he's I love that special effect of when he's glitching out.
Yeah.
That's really, really cool.
Yeah, it actually looks really good, and
It does.
I feel like it could have looked very hokey.
Yeah, I think 10 to 15 years ago,
Oh,
that's
God.
a much worse special
Oh
effect.
man, like the 2005 version of this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa.
And it's one of those things where if you actually look what the effect is, it probably was difficult to do, but
Yeah.
it's not flashy. It's
Yeah.
just there's these hexagonal camera things on the suit, and some of them are glitching out.
Yep.
So sometimes you see the suit, sometimes you don't, and it happens in different places. There's not
Yeah.
like a, he doesn't look like the Predator in like a invisible Predator thing. Or,
Right, where he's just like kind of a weird refracted
Yeah.
like figure. Yeah.
It works really well. It's really effective. Have you ever heard of something called trypophobia?
No, but I can tell from the phobia part that it's a fear of something.
It is. And it's I had come across this a couple times in the not too recent past. And so I wonder if it's just like something that creatives have like latched onto recently as something to use in stories. But the suit made me think of this because trypophobia is the fear of clusters of small holes, and it's usually organic in nature. So it's like a lot of times it's like skin. So if you see skin that has like a cluster of small holes,
Yeah.
there's this weird fear that people have. I don't know what it is. I feel like I've experienced it to a certain extent sometimes where you see a picture or something, you're not really I don't know. It's just a weird,
Yeah.
uncanny kind of like creepy body horror
sure.
type thing. And the suit reminds me of that because it has this appearance of just being made entirely of like clusters of holes.
Right.
And so I was wondering, I don't know if, I'd maybe want to ask the designer or something, but I wonder if that's was in the mind of the design of that suit, because even the suit itself is disturbing in a
Right.
it's not like a monster. It's just, it's a
No.
mechanical suit, but has that strange, trypophobic design to it
Right.
that just triggers something where it's like, even though this is a mechanical suit, I find it disturbing.
That's really interesting because it kind of goes back to the idea of
I think it's trypophobia. It might be trypophobia. Trypo. I'm not sure.
I have no idea. Tripo, either one. But I feel like it goes back to that what I was talking about, how the absence of something is the fear. Like that means that the suit itself is built of absence.
Right.
Yeah. And at the same time, it's also built of eyes.
That too.
So
yeah.
she's being constantly watched by this suit covered in thousands of little mechanical eyes.
Is it an episode of Aqua Teen Hunger Force where Carl gets turned into all eyes or something?
Yes.
Is that happens?
I think so.
Yeah. I can't remember exactly what it is.
You can't ask that happens because in that show it probably
Yes,
did. The
yeah.
question is more, are we actually remembering it the way it happened?
Yeah, I think it's something like that because I remember him walking away and just screaming every time he stepped because he's got eyes on his feet.
That sounds right.
But yeah, you're right. It's
Yeah.
also eyes. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a great design.
Absolutely.
I also find the ending a very satisfying monster kill when he's beating the shit out of James, and then she very assertively comes in, blasts him with the fire extinguisher, and then just like boom, 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 boom.
Yeah. Yeah, and I liked that too because I was genuinely surprised by the twist that it's the brother in the suit.
Yeah.
Like, I actually was not expecting that. So when it happened, I was like, wait a second. like it made me rethink what had happened previously, and it made me kind of wonder, like, okay, is this really a movie about, instead of it being she's being stalked by her abusive ex-boyfriend, is it about his brother trying to take some weird form of revenge because he blames her for his death? Is it about the brother trying to drive her crazy so that he gets to keep the money? Like, it made me sort of be like, wait a minute, what's happening? And then it cuts to the emergency services or police or whoever finding Adrian, the actual ex, tied up in his own house. And then I feel like that twist there was kind of effective. And I also like that they never strictly spell out for you, like, well, it was Tom in these moments, but it was Adrian in these moments. Like, it's hinted at. Yeah. It's kind of like he heavily implies via his very specific word choice in their final conversation that he definitely had something to do with all of it, but you never know for sure.
What does he say? I don't remember exactly.
He's like, so it's at the very end when Cecilia has gone back to the house, to sort of have the final confrontation with Adrian, and he's playing innocent, about the whole thing, and then he says, like, well. He's like staring right at her, and he's like, well, it couldn't have come as much of a surprise. And that's like the creepy text she got from an unknown number to her phone was just the word surprise.
Right. And whoever was in the suit at the hospital said that to her. Yeah. Okay. Yep. I actually didn't catch that the first time. Good. Yeah. Good catch.
Yeah. So it's like his way of indirectly saying, like, at least some of this was me.
Yeah. Because I do think. Do you like the ambiguity of the ending? Because I think it really makes you rethink, like you were saying, a lot of what you saw, because there's never a clear indication as to what exactly the plot is, really. Because if Adrian's not involved, then the plot seems to be Tom trying to get her to go crazy so he can get the money.
Yeah.
But if Adrian is involved, then it's like, I guess, just revenge. So it's like
I think it's more complicated than that. I think
that's true. It's a control thing. Yeah.
It is. I think that's exactly what it is. I think in the end, it goes back to that element of she left him and he can't accept that.
Right.
Because he feels as though she belongs to him. Which means that he has control over her. He decides when the relationship's over. He decides if the relationship is ever over. He decides everything about her life. And I think that that's really what the whole thing was about. And I think that Adrian was involved. Like, I use my little, like, threading the word surprise through everything as my evidence. But I really think that even some of the stuff that Cecilia says to the brother Tom about, like, you're just another version of your brother without the spine.
Right.
He always controlled you. Like, this kind of stuff where it's she pretty much spells out that she doesn't think he could come up with this plan without the brother.
Yeah.
And then the twist of her being pregnant.
Right. Yep.
And he wants the baby.
Yep.
And I think that's ultimately what it's about, is like he gets her pregnant to control her and to keep her. And then having the baby, there's an ego thing about, like, this is my child. I'm this optics genius. So if it's my child, then this child will be great and exceptional, and it's your duty to be its mother. And it's like, yes, it all changed when you're the mother of his child.
Right.
So yeah, I think the ambiguity works at the end because it's ambiguous about when it was Adrian versus when it was Tom. I don't think it's actually all that ambiguous about the fact that it was at some points Adrian.
Yeah, as when we were watching it last night, we were watching with a couple of our friends, one of whom I had seen it with in the theater, so we had both seen it before. And she pointed out something that I hadn't thought about, but I feel like actually it's a really smart way to handle this, which is we all kind of remarked on when whoever's in the suit shows up at the hospital. He's acting very erratic. He's not trying to hide himself at all.
Yeah.
He's just, enjoying having the suit on and panicking kind of in a way that he had not done up to that point.
Yeah.
And once they reveal who's in the suit, I think Meredith pointed out that it's actually the implication kind of is it's Tom in the suit in that second part. And Tom is acting more erratically than Adrian is. Adrian is
he's the cold, calculating one, whereas Tom is like the little brother playing with a fun new toy.
Yeah, which explains a change in attitude, which you need for that part of the story because you need the ball to start rolling.
Yeah, that whole like the violent confrontation and all of that stuff that starts happening that feels so different from the way the Invisible Man behaves at the beginning.
Yeah.
Where he's all about like mind games and stealth and being clever, like being more clever than everybody around him. And then it pivots to this sort of like, I'm going to like fight with these deputies or, or whatever. But I think that I like that the movie hints heavily enough that Adrian is guilty because it makes what Cecilia does feel just rather than just her having also kind of given up on morality and decided to go to the dark side to get revenge. Instead, it feels like an act of justice where she knows the legal system around her is not going to protect her, so she chooses to protect herself.
I love the way James plays it when he sees what's going on. Like, he's just got this, like, you can see 5 different emotions on his face being like, well, there's nothing I can do about this.
Yep.
Clearly, this guy was bad. She just killed a guy, but was it warranted? Like, you can see all of this stuff going through his head. It's a very good performance by that
Absolutely. Guy. And you can tell he's thinking about the totality of what has happened. So it includes Adrian's horrible treatment of Cecilia, but it also includes the fact that Adrian and or Tom attacked his daughter.
Right. Yeah.
And, as a father, he's like, I have to protect my family. And this guy came after my family, too. And, and I even love when he says to her, like, you never came here intending to get him to admit anything on tape, did you? And she was just like, he's a very sick man. And he did a very sad thing. And it was like, damn.
One of the other little logic details that stood out to me this time, too, was... So after she kills him in the suit, she comes out of the bathroom and starts screaming and stuff, and she calls 911. And I know she very specifically doesn't say who she is. And she just says that someone I'm with killed themselves. And then she leaves. And the implication seems to be she's trying to get out of there before the ambulance gets there.
Yeah.
But she herself points out that there's a video camera there.
Yes.
So she very clearly is on the video camera. Like, you even see her on the camera.
Yeah.
So it's like they're going to figure out who was there when it happened eventually. But
yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that's very much done for the sort of dramatic effect of getting her to walk out and have to explain herself to James, and then she's her dramatic hero walk away.
Yeah, it's just one of those like little things where it's like, well, it's dramatic license more than why is the phone in the attic? I don't know, because it's cool, it's fun.
Right. Whereas in this one, you could see they see her on the camera and they come to her house or wherever she's staying the next day and they say, you were there, why did you leave? And she could be like, I panicked.
Sure.
He's my abusive ex. I thought he was dead, and then it turns out he was alive. His brother tormented me. I'm pregnant. Like, and then they'd all be like, well, add all that together with the fact that you were also falsely imprisoned. And then also we have it on videotape that he very, very clearly on tape slits his own throat.
Yeah.
We're very sorry, miss.
Yeah, that's... Well, what's also interesting...
A lot of own throat slitting in this movie.
Yeah. What's also interesting, and this is, I feel like, one of my narrative cone things. I feel like one of the questions you can come away from, because at the end of this movie, she gets released.
Yes.
Because Tom clearly was doing whatever. But they also, and they kind of talk about this in I think James mentions this, they kind of admit to the fact that this Invisible Man suit exists. Like, this is now technology that is present in the world. The people the security guards who worked at that hospital got beat up by it.
Yeah, they even say, like, we have tons of corroborating witnesses at the hospital.
So, I don't know. If I was a detective looking into the death of Adrian, I'd be like, almost because like an invisible man cut his throat open. And Cecilia didn't seem to be in the room when it happened. We know this technology exists. Maybe we should talk to her.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that I think that's true, but I think at the same time, all she would have to do is like, I mean, you know, officer, do whatever you need to do. Search my house, question me, search Adrian's house. And so long as she, like, you know, fucking threw it in the ocean or burnt it or whatever, they're just that.
No, you don't. You keep that. You keep the suit. If people are coming to look for it, you put it in the closet, you turn it on so they can't find it. But, like, I mean, that's like one of those. Yeah. I say it's a narrative cone thing because it's like all of those questions are outside the edges of the cone.
Yeah.
Like, that's stuff that if you really want to get into it, you can.
Oh,
They open that door, like, they cross that barrier just to clean up the story at the end.
Yes.
But, like, anything that happens after the credits roll doesn't matter.
Right,
you know?
right. No, I mean, I would say most of the stuff, if not all of the stuff we've both been picking on while we've been talking about this movie, we are being very picky.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Like as usual, whenever we hit a good movie, we have to nitpick to try and find shit to talk about.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's just, you know, pointing it out for the sake of doing it. It doesn't actually bother me that at all.
Yeah, no, I think the phone being in the attic was the only thing that bothered me. Everything else I was willing to roll with. The phone being in the attic, I was just like, I would just love a throwaway explanation of why.
There's some conveniences, like was getting her to run out of the house. I guess getting her to run out of the house and getting caught on camera was part of the plan. You know,
I
setting
don't
her
know
up.
If that really was, if it was just convenient.
Just convenient, yeah.
Just convenient, and it showed she was alone.
Yeah, I think that's the thing is like if you assume that everything that she did was going according to their plan, I think it's tough to track. But if you assume that everything that she did and all her reactions were that's just how she reacted and it worked for them because it makes her look crazy, then I think, okay, if the plan was let's get her to look convincingly crazy and then frame her for her sister's murder. Yes. Then I think that makes more sense.
I'm guessing that was the plan.
Yeah. I think that's it. To answer your, I don't know if it was an actual question at the beginning, but seeing it in the theater was fantastic. It's a really good theater movie. I think especially a movie like this where you are forced to really draws you into those spaces. Yeah. When you're isolated in the theater, there's all that's in front of you is the screen. That stuff works really, really well.
Yeah. Yeah, it kind of made me think when we were watching it, I was kind of bummed to have not seen it in the theater because it reminded me of A Quiet Place.
Yes.
In that it is a very specific sensory gimmick that gets to you as an audience member, and I can see it working better in the theater than it does when you're just like at home on your couch and you like, you know, you pick up your phone because like you got a notification on your phone, you saw it light up, so you're like, oh, what is that?
Who's that guy? Gotta look him up.
Right. Or I'm kind of thirsty. I'm gonna go grab some water. I'm gonna go grab, you know, whatever.
Right.
Like I can see this movie in a more closed context, like really forcing you to pay attention, even in those quiet scenes, even in those like nothing's really there scenes. And I think some of that felt like it must have been lost doing it at home.
Yeah, it didn't. I mean, it's a little bit of that and a little bit of I had seen it, so I kind of remembered a lot of the. Remembered surprisingly few of the gags actually.
Yeah.
So a lot of them still worked, but some of them I was like, yeah, I remember that clearly, and yeah, it's not quite the same experience. That's why.
Yeah.
I'm really happy that theaters are starting to open up again because it really is a different experience.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And I this is a whole nother conversation, but I many times, especially in college, I'd be like, let's go see this movie in the theater because it's playing at whatever midnight movie, and my friends would be like, why? You have that on DVD, and I'm like, yeah, it's not the same thing.
It's not the same. As somebody who religiously goes and sees Jaws every summer in whatever local indie theater is playing it, it's not the same.
Yeah, I mean,
I love Jaws.
I've seen Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2 100 times.
Yeah.
I've seen, I think, both of them in the theater at this point.
Yeah.
Maybe like midway through last year, during the pandemic, we went to see it at the drive-in. It was a double feature of Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2. Totally different experience.
That's awesome. That's a perfect drive-in movie.
Oh, fantastic.
Oh, my God. Let's do drive-ins this summer.
I want to do everything this summer. I can't remember. I know I've talked about this before, but I can't remember on what show. But it was really funny because Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2 together tops 3 hours. Like it's Evil Dead 1 is like
I guess that makes sense.
Probably 80 something minutes.
Yeah.
Evil Dead 2 probably about like an hour 40.
Yeah.
There was like a 15-minute break in between.
Yeah.
So we were in and out fairly quickly. On the other screen at the drive-in was a back-to-back of 2 Harry Potter movies.
Oh my God. And each one of those is like 2 hours and 25 minutes.
So I feel like when we were leaving,
it
was like the credits for the second movie, the opening credits had like just rolled for the second movie. And I was like, you asshole.
Yeah.
Like that's a movie, like Evil Dead and Evil Dead, perfect drive-in movies.
Yes.
Harry Potter movies, not so much. Especially because you got to imagine.
If you are in a pandemic and you have children, I can absolutely see doing it.
Yeah, but I was going to say, especially if you have kids, though, it's so late. You know, and it's like
then they're just going to sleep in tomorrow, and you get to sleep in.
Or I mean, I guess
I'm
if they
sure
fall asleep in the
where's
car.
Wes?
Yeah.
Wes would probably back me up on this.
Someone with kids to take their kids to the drive-in. We'll get Dave to bring the kids to the drive-in and see what happens.
Perfect.
But yeah, I think that's, unless you had anything else, I think that's going to do it for Invisible Man.
I mean, I don't want to go off in too big of a thing because we've already been talking for quite a bit. But I'm curious, do you think of this as a horror movie?
Ooh, interesting. I would say yes.
Yeah.
I would say it is, like, because if you want to get really, it's probably more of a sci-fi movie. If you really want to get specific about it. But I feel like it is playing in the horror playground. Because like I was saying, it feels more, it's almost more like a ghost movie at the beginning.
Yeah.
So it feels like a horror movie more than it does a sci-fi movie. So I would say so.
See, for me, I'm not against calling it a horror movie, but I do think that it is this interesting melding of genres because it is kind of it's a bit of a horror movie, it's a bit of a sci-fi movie, it's a bit of a psychological thriller.
Sure, yeah.
And I just think it's interesting that it is because of the level of paranoia it espouses. We're kind of willing to accept it as a horror movie, despite the fact that there aren't a ton of jump scares. There's no monster per se. There is and there isn't. There's no demonic or supernatural influence. Right. He's not a mass murderer. Like he's a guy. There's no supernatural anything to him, which I just think it's interesting because like this does very much feel like a horror movie to me.
Yeah.
But when I thought about it, like when I was describing it to somebody, and I was like, yeah, this kind of just sounds like a psychological thriller if you strip out some of the work they do in like with the environment, with the ambiance.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'd be curious to see where Wes comes down on that, because I
feel like he would say no.
Yeah, because I know he usually goes with supernatural.
Yeah.
Or without supernatural, doesn't count as horror. So
yeah,
I'd be curious to see. I don't know if he's seen it, but I'll ask him when we talk tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that's gonna do it. It is number 9 on our list. Do you think that this is? I guess I should say what I usually say, which is the placement deserved? Should it be higher? Should it be lower? Or should it be removed from the list entirely?
So I'm good with it on the list.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, me too.
I think it's doing something interesting and modern with a concept that's been around for a while, which I think is really cool. Do I think it should be top 10? No.
It's an aggressive placement.
Yeah. No, if you told me top 50, I'd be like, yeah, okay. Top 100, definitely, sure. But yeah, there's just there are so many. I mean, I would argue, I find you said now A Quiet Place is one spot up on the list from it.
Number 10, yes.
I find A Quiet Place scarier. Like,
okay,
in terms of just a visceral reaction to what's happening on screen. There's more jump scares. There's more like action-y, like tension and stress to that movie. This movie is a lot more quiet. It's a lot, well, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not literally quiet, but like pacing.
Quiet Place, ironically, very loud.
Very loud.
Invisible Man, very quiet.
Very quiet. But because this movie is so psychological, and so much of what makes it frightening is the way you think about things and your perception. I don't find it as it's scary when you think about it. It's not scary when you sit and just watch it. Like her just like walking around the house being like, "Where are you? Come out," is less scary than Emily Blunt trying with all of her might to not scream when she's about to give birth.
Yeah. That's interesting. I think I would go the other way with this. I think I find this one to be scarier than A Quiet Place because I feel like it's so relatable in this.
Yeah.
Where in A Quiet Place, it's still convoluted monster rules, kind of.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair.
Whereas in this one, you are doing so much work as the viewer. You are bringing so much to it. like if The Invisible Man was a ghost movie, I probably would have left a lot of the lights on in my house the night I came home, because like it's got it. With The Innkeepers, those types of movies work really well on me. The ones where they force you to do a lot of work.
Gotcha.
And Quiet Place never really gets that for me because it's not quite the same with the sound stuff, whereas this is a very visual movie, obviously. But, but
no, I totally understand that. I think there's a good argument to be made in either direction.
Yeah,
you know, like I'm not trying to say that this movie isn't scary.
Sure.
I guess I'm just saying I don't really feel like it's top 10.
Yeah.
scary.
No, I don't think so. I don't think Quiet Place is either, but
that's fair. I don't either.
Where would I put this on the list? Ugh.
I mean, if you told me this was like somewhere between 100 and 120,
yeah,
I'd be pretty comfortable with that. If you said it was 82, I'd be like, yeah, all right.
Yeah.
I wouldn't hate that, but I don't know.
It feels like it should be over 100 to me.
Yeah.
I don't know if it necessarily has to be that far over 100.
Well, like I'm seeing you scroll through right now, and you're in the 120s, 130s, and I just saw The Exorcist,
right?
The Omen.
It's not a battle we're gonna win.
Yeah.
I mean, if we go by our rule, The Shining is 113.
Jesus.
Would I put Invisible Man?
Is Invisible Man a scarier movie than The Shining?
No.
Is it a scarier movie than The Thing?
No, I would not put it higher than The Thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really good. Like I do think.
I mean we are being harsh again in our judgments.
Yeah.
But
in my list, if I had to reshuffle these movies, I bet it would probably be around 100. It might even make it into the 90s.
Yeah. I feel like anywhere from 90 to like 120.
Yeah.
I feel like I wouldn't argue hard against any of those.
Yeah, I think so. I think that sounds good to me. So
yeah,
it's going to end our coverage of the Invisible Man.
What are we doing next time, Claire?
Hopefully in the sequel, we can get John Cena to show up. I hit the randomizer. Beep, boop, boop, beep, boop, boop, beep, boop. Next time, we're going to Japan, baby.
Yes.
And we will be doing number 165. Hold on to your butts for this one. We're doing Audition.
Yes.
Get your nicest dog bowl, fill it with human puke.
Yep, my hypodermic needle is ready.
Oh, boy. Oh, boy. Yep.
I am pumped.
That, not to give too much away, but Audition's one of those movies where I heard so much about it.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, I don't know if I can do this. And then I watched it, much like The Devils, and I was like,
yeah.
This is a really good movie.
Yes.
Even on top of all the crazy shit. It's like it's a legitimately good movie.
Yeah. No, it's a lot. This is one I'm going to be watching alone. I don't
know if Greg can do this one.
My husband is not going to be on board for this one. I will tell you right now.
Maybe we do a night where you come over and we'll watch it and we'll send the spouses out somewhere else because Caitlin's not going to want to watch that one either.
Yeah. This one's not for the weak of stomach.
But thank you guys for listening. If you want to give us don't give us a rating or review. Tell your friends to listen to the show.
Come hang out with us.
Yeah. Leave us some comments on YouTube or wherever you happen to listen to it. That'd be great. If you want to join our Patreon, the Penske File Patreon, Amanda and I are going through the Friday the 13th series because none of those movies are going to be on this list anytime soon. And we've got 1 through 5 available right now. And this month, next month, we'll be doing. Oh wait, 5 didn't. I don't think I put 5 up yet. So maybe when this comes out, 5 will be up. But anyway.
Yeah.
If it's May, part 5 is out. If it's June, part 6 is coming.
Yes.
Part 6, Jason lives.
Hooray.
Because it was the final chapter in part 4, and then it was a new beginning.
Yes.
And now he's back to life. So
absolutely. It all makes very logical sense.
Yes. But thank you guys for listening, Amanda. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Glenn.
And we will see you guys next time.
Bye, everyone.